Hi, you're watching or listening to my adventure series. My name's Simone Talford. A few years ago, I had my midlife crisis a little bit early and I decided to go sailing across the Atlantic for 6 weeks. I didn't come back after 6 weeks. A year and a bit later, I returned having sailed around the world. Since returning, I'm committed to talking to other amazing, bonkers, brilliant, adventurous women who are also getting out of their comfort zones and learning about what they're capable of. I love each and every one of their stories, and I find something inspiring and motivating about hearing how these seemingly ordinary women are achieving these huge, extraordinary feats. My guest today is Holly Budge, and she is absolutely no exception to this. She's done lots of things that you're going to hear about, including 2 world records, achieving 2 world records. But one of the main reasons I really want to talk to her is that it's led her down a path towards conservation, something I'm particularly very passionate about. But we'll get into that shortly. Let's go and meet Holly. Hi, Holly, how are you?
Hi, Simone. I'm really well. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Feels more important now than ever, doesn't it, to ask someone how they are, I think. Thanks so much for the interview. It's great to finally get a chance to talk to you. Where are you? I presume you probably didn't anticipate being in the UK at the moment.
No, I didn't. I'm in near Winchester, in Hampshire. Yeah. So, and it's actually nice to, to kind of put a positive spin on lockdown. It's nice to be able to see my family because they're in my support bubble. So actually having that time has been really nice.
Oh, good. It sounds like you were taking a positive spin on it, which is very good to hear. Now, what I really want to ask you, so many things to ask you, of course. The premise for this whole podcast is women who've dramatically changed their lives through adventure. You're my first guest who's gone on a path to conservation, which we'll get onto in a bit, if that's okay. But initially, absolutely, I think it's important to remind maybe yourself and anyone who's listening who isn't familiar with your story that you do hold 2 world records under your belt as well. So my first sort of question to you is, what led you on the path to skydiving off Everest, I suppose?
There's a question. So I think for me, it was when I went traveling around New Zealand in my early 20s. I was 21 and I did a tandem skydive, and that 60 seconds of adrenaline, 60 seconds of sheer terror, that completely changed the course of my life forever. Not only did I want to go straight back up and do it again, I was also pretty blown away by the fact that people were actually getting paid to jump out of perfectly good aeroplanes. And my careers advisor at school had totally forgot to tell me about that. So I decided there and then this is what I wanted to do. I wanted to be employed as a free fall camera woman. I knew nothing about skydiving, nothing about filming, and nobody in New Zealand, but I set myself this great big goal, came back to the UK, carried on working as I was working as a graphic designer in London, and just couldn't get this, I just couldn't shake this idea. I just thought, I'm going to run with this one. And I didn't overthink it, saved up enough money, went back to New Zealand, put myself through my skydiving course, and with lots of hard work and dedication, quite a few months later, I got my dream job and was getting paid to jump out of planes up to 10, 11, 12 times a day, every day. So I think on reflection, I like to call this the boldness of youth, because as I said, I didn't overthink it, and I didn't know anything about skydiving or filming, but I knew that I could have a go at learning those skills. So that gave me this massive confidence and this self-belief when I achieved this goal, that I could do whatever I put my mind to, or I could at least have a go.
Yeah, exactly. So, have a go. That's the most important thing. Following your gut, something that's taken me about 30 something years now to finally realize.
Yeah, no, following your gut is definitely it's so important, especially doing adventures. So I'm 42 now. I've tried to keep that mindset going for the last 2 decades, hanging on to my 21-year-old brain.
Good, never lose it.
With the added bonus of some wisdom of the last 20 years, hopefully, on top of that. So when I heard about Skydive Everest, it was a world first expedition, and I just knew as a skydiver that was an opportunity I wasn't going to miss out on. So I rang up the organizer and he said, that's great, Holly. We don't have any other women signed up. So I knew that was my hook for getting sponsors on board, which was absolutely imperative. And he said, great, can I count you in? And I said, yes. And he said, that will be £24,000.
Wowza.
And I said, yeah, absolutely, count me in. I didn't have the £24,000, but I knew that I could do everything within my power to try and get sponsors to buy into my vision and my passion. So that's exactly what I did. Never an easy task getting sponsors on board. It gets slightly easier when you start getting a few more big adventures under your belt and start building a bit of a portfolio. So skydive Everest, what did that entail? That entailed flying up to 29,500 feet in a small aircraft that had never flown to that altitude before.
Wow.
So we didn't even know if we were going to
it was going to be successful. That must have been so exciting and exhilarating, but very stressful.
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty amazing, really. So the pilots flew this small aircraft. It was a Pilatus Porter, and they flew it from Switzerland to Nepal. Took them 5 days. And when they arrived in Nepal, the Nepalese aviation officials said, now you need to prove to us that you can fly a plane. So that wasn't good for us because we were on a really small weather window. So we lost 2 days whilst our pilots had to do a course and a written exam and prove that they could actually fly an aeroplane.
This must
luckily they did.
Calming any of your nerves. If it were me, I'd be like, it'd be so frustrating to die in a plane crash on my way to jumping out of a plane off Everest.
I think that's all part of it though, Simone, just embracing the unknown. Like with most adventures, you've got no idea what's going to happen. So it was more of a frustration because we just really wanted to get the jumps in while we could. So that's how it started. They passed, they proved they could fly the plane, and we did a couple of acclimatization jumps, and then the big jump up to 29,500 feet. It took us 45 minutes to fly up to altitude, and it was the first time that I had skydived with oxygen. So there was quite a few things that were very different to when I was jumping in New Zealand, oxygen being one of them. My parachute was 3 times the size of my normal chute to make up for the thinner air and the higher altitude. I also jumped with ski goggles and a neoprene, neoprene fleece lined suit, because the wind chill factor was -60 at 29,000 feet, so pretty chilly up there. So we flew up, and normally in the plane in New Zealand it would be quite a social time. We'd be chatting and laughing and making videos of the tandems that we were filming, and it was a good fun environment. Well, as here it felt really lonely, just listening to myself breathing with this I felt like Darth Vader's ugly sister with this just hearing yourself breathe, but also looking out of the window and thinking, I really hope we don't have to jump out early or bail out for any emergency, because we were surrounded by these Himalayan giants and there really wasn't many safe places to land. So it was really imperative to get back to the landing area. So the door opened, and what happened next, nothing could have prepared me for. The first person to skydive Everest is 3 seconds in front of me. They jumped out. I moved to the door. My camera flyer climbs out onto the camera step, ready to jump with me. I'm giving my count, ready, set. And the next thing, my camera flyer's hand is on my shoulder, pushing me back into the aeroplane, saying, don't jump. But it was too late. I had too much momentum on my ready, set, go, and I was backpedaling in the door, and I actually fell out of the aeroplane. Couldn't believe it.
I did not know this. Obviously, I knew that you'd done the skydive, I knew everything about it, but I didn't know that this emergency moment happened. My God.
Well, people say, was skydiving Everest the most incredible experience? And no, it was absolutely terrifying. The reason the camera flyer had tried to push me back in the plane is the pilot had held up a stop sign, unbeknown to me, said don't let the jumpers out, but it was too late. So it was almost complete cloud cover over the ground. And what I'd noticed, certainly now from spending much more time in the Himalayas, is the minute you start seeing the clouds roll up the valley, the next minute you're very often engulfed in them very quickly. So there was a sort of hole in the clouds, and we were kind of aiming for that, but then the clouds moved in pretty quick, and it was almost complete cloud cover. So I had no visual on the ground below. So I didn't know where I was in relation to my landing area. So in skydiving, you don't have fancy GPS equipment telling you where you are. It's literally using your eyes and a visual thing. So came through the clouds, and then I pulled my parachute 18,000 feet, and then my oxygen mask was obscuring my vision, and I was hell-bent on finding this landing area. So I decided to take my oxygen mask off at that point, and just I think it's kind of a point worthy of making, that when you're doing these extreme sports on your own, like skydiving, there's no one to ask. So you really do have to use your judgment and your skill and your experience.
And you're analysing risks so quickly, aren't you?
Oh, in a heartbeat. So you've got to back yourself to make the right decisions. So parachute opened, made it back to the landing area just about, which was obviously a huge relief.
Phew, yeah, I'm relieved, and I'm just sitting over here. My palms are really clammy.
And about 2 minutes after I landed, it was complete whiteout. The clouds, you just couldn't see a meter or two in front of you. So I felt really fortunate walking away from that jump. A couple of days later, same thing happened. Stop sign went up. It was too late. The jumpers had already got out, and one girl broke her femur, and it was, for them, the clouds went all the way to the ground. So they had no visuals. So really scary. It's a scary environment to be in. Changes in a heartbeat, weather-wise.
Definitely, it's not like you can practice that environment either. You can do as much preparation as you did, but ultimately,
yeah, absolutely. But the thing, Simone, that I wasn't prepared for, that I hadn't had any practice in at that time, was the media. And the global media picked the story up. There was a Reuters reporter at the landing area, so microphone straight in front of face when I'd landed, and babbling on. And next thing, I flew out the next day back to the UK, and when I got to Kathmandu airport, it was on the front of the Kathmandu Times. I then got upgraded on the way home thanks to Virgin. Nice. But my cameraman had to stay in the economy. And then I got put straight in a hotel room in London, courtesy of the BBC, and did 6 live TV interviews in 24 hours. And it was a crazy whirlwind. Went on the BBC breakfast, the red sofa, did a live interview to CNN and CBS. And that was probably the most scary part of the whole thing. They put me in a room, and they said, don't look anywhere else but this camera lens. So there was no one to see or converse with. And they said, don't worry, you're just going out live to America.
That'll put you at ease. That'll calm you right down.
And then the reporter asked me, how did I acclimate? Well, that was a bit of a hot round the collar moment. And I answered it in a very British way. And I said, very well, thank you. And you? So for those of you that don't know that what acclimate means, it means acclimatize in American. Didn't realize that at the time. But apart from being a massive selfish indulgence of skydiving next to Everest, it was an incredibly worthwhile expedition that raised over $300,000 for charity. Okay. So really worthwhile.
That gave you your first proper taste of the power of media and the power of what you do and the effects it can benefit.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, and how quickly it's all over too. It's just
Yeah, God,
whirlwind,
what a
whirlwind.
rush. I would have
And
thought jumping
then
out the plane was the rush, but as you
yeah,
said for you, it's really interesting actually that the media circus that was like not foisted upon you, but I guess you'd never got to the point of imagining what that would be like, which shows you were doing it for absolutely the right reasons. But it is really interesting to hear that that's the most terrifying part, because you've described yourself, haven't you, as a sort of a normal person. I think I was reading somewhere, and you know, you have this down-to-earth approach to life, and just from meeting you even just briefly a few times now, that certainly comes across. But yeah, it's amazing that you've done these things. And then how long afterwards did you do the ride across Mongolia? It's your second world record, isn't it?
I'm laughing because I do consider myself very normal, but my friends would disagree with that, I'm sure.
Who needs normal?
Yeah, exactly. So yes, it all happened quite quickly. The second world first expedition, I got home from Everest. I you know, you feel, you know, a bit lacking in some way when you get back from these big expeditions, because you've put your heart and soul into every part of it, from the physical training to the all the logistics and getting the sponsors and keeping the sponsors on board. So I think it's definitely a thing, the post-expedition blues. But luckily for me, I didn't have to wait too long. I had a phone call 2 weeks later to say, "Hi Holly, would you like to take part in another world first expedition?" And I said, "Yes, what is it?" And they said, "It's 1,000-kilometer horse race across Mongolia on semi-wild horses." Luckily for me, I've spent most of my childhood horse riding and competing in triathlons, running, swimming, shooting, and riding. So I knew I had the skills to do that. So it was an immediate yes. It was a quick phone call to one of the women that were on the Skydive Everest expedition. They were an IT company. I said, "Could you sponsor me to do this?" She said yes. That was my easiest sponsorship, apart from a lobster farmer in Wales who part sponsored me to climb Everest several years after these expeditions, just so he could talk about it in the pub with his mates. So that was probably the easiest sponsor I got on board. So riding across Mongolia, pretty incredible experience. It was the first year this adventure had run. So it really was
a race,
unknown.
isn't it? That's the important part. You're not doing this to have a lovely time. You're doing it to beat other people.
Yes, yeah. So there was 25 riders that started, and I rode a total of 25 horses. So there were two rules to this race. One, you couldn't ride at night because it was too dangerous, the terrain. And two, you couldn't ride one horse more than 40 kilometers. Apart from that, it was total freedom. And another thing is there was no topographical information on our GPS. So it was literally A to B with a straight line between the two. So that made life interesting, because quite often that straight line was not a straight line, and sort of mountain ranges, etc. in between. So these horses, they're feisty. It really is survival of the fittest in Mongolia. You see dead animals everywhere, and you kind of get used to that. I know that sounds a bit morbid. And this was the first time a team of vets from Western vets had worked with a team of Mongolian vets. And that was quite interesting because they had very different ways of doing things. And in Mongolia, they believe if the horse has infection, they just slit their noses and believe all the infection will bleed out. Well, I'm not sure, maybe that does work, but certainly the horse that I saw that happen to was then, it didn't make it. So who knows? But really hardy horses. They're actually ponies. They're small, but in Mongolia, they don't. It's a respect thing to call them a horse. So some of these horses were pretty difficult to ride and even get on in the first place.
And how long are you spending in the saddle each day? I read somewhere
13 hours. Yeah,
that's a long time.
So going back to what you just said about it being a race, so I was going to ride on my own, and then there was another South African girl riding on her own, and it just made sense to buddy up, like being out on the middle of nowhere in Mongolia as two blonde Western women. Just you know, there was no prize for finishing alone. So we buddied up, and we were making great guns. We were pretty competitive in the race, and we got to this checkpoint at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So we knew we had 4 hours to push on to the next checkpoint. So we thought, great, let's go for it. Took the direct route on the GPS, went over one mountain and thought, that's okay, we'll get down from this one and the checkpoint will be the other side. Went up another mountain, thought it's definitely going to be over the other side.
No.
One more mountain, and basically started losing daylight. We'd run out of water. Very quickly realized that we were spending a night in the mountains. Pretty scary place. Very strange noises. You can hear like wolves, and there's massive herds of wild horses, and all sorts of other strange, noises that you couldn't recognize, and you're thinking that this is actually a little bit scary. And I'm scared of the dark. Sounds a bit odd, but
no,
it was
a
bit scary.
Yeah. Also, it must have been freezing as well. I'm not sure how much you were able to carry, but not enough to make sub-zero temperatures warm.
Well, the temperature in Mongolia, it goes up to about 30 degrees in the day and then sub-zero at night. So it, as you said, it really does drop off. So we only had one man tent, the smallest one-man tent on the market, to trying to get two people into that. My friend Sass had some hobbles, so a piece of leather that goes around the horse's legs to stop them running off. Sounds terrible, but in Mongolia, that's all they know, and there's very few trees and places to actually harness the horses to. So I guess that works pretty well for them. I didn't have any hobbles, so she hobbled her horse. So I had to tie my horse to this great big rock, hoping that it would still be there in the morning. We'd managed to get into this little one-man tent. It's freezing cold, pitch dark. And the next thing you hear, hop, 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 hop. So that was her horse hopping off down the mountain. No. And the next thing you just hear this great big rock being dragged down, following it. My horse. So we decided there's nothing we can do right now. It's dark and we're not venturing out. So we'll go out at first light. And unbelievably, the horses were right outside our tent. So it made me think, because it was a windy night and the tent was flapping around, and they don't like flapping material. So it made me think what else was out there
that made them want to stay near you. Yeah.
That made us think we were the safe haven. So I thought, great, we'll catch the horses, carry on in the race. Little did I know it was going to take a further 8 hours to catch my horse, and he was never a meter further than a meter away. Incredibly frustrating. Tried everything, like eating next to him, no eye contact, natural horsemanship, trying to grab him, just didn't work. Anyway, we finally caught him and we got back in the race. By that time, we'd kind of lost our pole positions. When we got to the next checkpoint, they're like, oh yeah, loads of them have been through.
You're like, great. you haven't seen what we've seen.
Yeah, well, exactly. And you've just hit the nail on the head. There was no prize really for winning this race. The prize was the experience of doing it. So once we'd taken that race pressure away from ourselves, it was brilliant, because we were still riding 13 hours a day and we were still, going at a good pace, but we didn't have that pressure. We weren't sort of looking over our shoulder thinking, what position are we in the race? And actually the winner did it just 2 days ahead of us. So he sat at the finish line for 2 days waiting for
everyone
the
else.
rest of us. Yeah. And I think the last people came in 10 or 11 days. So it was quite a spread out field by the end of it. We slept with them in the local yurts every night, apart from the mountainous night, ate with the locals. And it was just an incredible way to see the country, just that freedom. And every person that lent us a horse to ride, they got paid a year's worth of schooling for one of the children in their family. So you can imagine everyone was turning out with their horses, like, ride our horse. Luckily the vets had like vetted, you know, there was a lineup of sort of 30 horses that you could choose from. So I learned the word in Mongolian for racehorse, crazy horse. Some of these horses, they were a bit, you know, they didn't move very fast. So then I started getting into a different type of horse that had to be tacked up by the Mongolians, spinning around on the spot. And it was, they were kind of looking at me like, yeah, good luck with that one.
It sounds more wild, semi-wild, some of those.
Exactly. It was definitely felt a bit more wild, a few of them. So normally when I got on the horse, so you kind of rein ride all of them one-handed, and I was just getting on all of them, tapping left, right with the end of the rein, canter a circle, like, and bring them back as if I'm in charge. Well, with this one horse, I tapped it on the left and we were gone. And it galloped 40 kilometers in 2.25 hours. It was pouring with rain, trying to hang on to this GPS, find a point on the horizon, just gallop towards it. And you get these great bigger marmot holes. They're about 1 meter wide by 1 meter deep. And this particular horse had one eye.
Oh my God.
But it managed to jump all of these holes, and it took me, it was actually the last horse. So at the finish line, it took me 10 minutes to stop this horse.
Oh my goodness.
Really
Firecracker.
feisty.
I love it. Sounds like it was fate that you ended up. Sounds like you might be one of the few that could control him.
I just hung on. It was just purely hanging on.
What happens to the horses afterwards? Just thinking, like, after you finish your 40K
so
with
massive
them.
Logistically it was huge, the race, because all the horses had to be shuttled back 40 k's to there. So I didn't see any of that side of it. That was obviously the organisers doing all of that. I've just thought of another really amazing memory though of that race. Was one of the days I was riding on my own, and this horse, he didn't really like being on his own, and so I had to like make a little whip, not to whip him, just to show him the whip. It was called Mr. Whippy.
The threat of it.
So I had to plait this leather, because we had these treeless saddles. We couldn't have ridden in Mongolian like rigid wood saddles. That just would have killed us. So I had to like strip leather off the saddle, plait it together, and make Mr. Whippy. And even the sight of Mr. Whippy in the corner of this horse's eye, and he just started moving faster. I was like, brilliant, we're on to something here. And then the next minute we were going past this watering hole, and there was about 300 or 400 wild horses there, and the whole lot just moved off at a full gallop, and we went with them.
Oh no.
So we were just in the middle of this herd of wild horses at a full gallop. It was like, it was just incredible, the sound and the energy of being galloping with wild horses.
I said, oh no, because I thought I would just be thrown off instantly and then stampeded to death. But for you, it sounds like it must be.
Well, no, I was thinking I would be. I was thinking, how is this going to end? Either me falling off, getting trampled. My horse was freaking out, I think. I was freaking out. Next thing, they didn't go very far. They just went to the next watering hole. So thankfully, we just sort of tried to move away from them, maintaining eye contact. Just, we're going over here now. And the horse was, I think, quite traumatized by it. So that was one of probably my best adventure moments or memories ever. Like, incredibly exhilarating but terrifying at the same time.
I bet. Oh, it's great to hear about, though. Honestly, it's so interesting. I wanted to ask you as well, because I know you rode as a child when you were younger, but you obviously mentally and physically are sort of built to withstand these amazing adventures, and that's really interesting to me as well. Do you think women are sort of innately designed better for, I'm not saying better than a man, but as in we seem to be good at these endurance sports, and we're finally sort of doing more of them, getting more recognition for them, which I love.
Yeah, oh, definitely. I think women are fantastic endurance athletes, because certainly from what I've seen and from leading expeditions in the Himalayas, don't take this the wrong way for the guys that are listening, but a lot of the time women are operating less on ego and more on just taking every step at a time. I'm just going to keep plodding along, keep pushing, and it's quite often the women that are still going all those hours later, you know. So I think women definitely got this built-in stamina. I think stamina is a really good word. And, you know, gritty.
That's something that's come up in a lot of my interviews, actually, these women, that it's the grit, you know, because you can train for most things physically. We can train to get our bodies ready for things, every environment, every terrain, but ultimately it's having the moral sort of fortitude and the grit within yourself to keep yourself going when you're at your lowest ebb. Even if you've got muscles to do it, everything else, you have to find the thing that makes you dig a bit deeper.
And I think that always comes down to mindset, and you just can't necessarily train for that, or you can't train for that as easily as you can physically train. So when you've got nothing else, it's just, you know, and at times on my adventures, certainly on Everest and climbing other big mountains, you know, your body is screaming no, but your mind is whispering yes, come on, you can do this, you can keep going. And I think for me anyway, that's kind of been my secret weapon, is knowing that the mind is far stronger in many ways than the body.
That leads me a question I was going to ask you a bit later on, but I think it was good to ask you that now as we're talking about it. You've spoken as well about how much you like mountaineering because you have, you know, just the kit that you need, that everything has a purpose. And that's what I really liked about sailing as well, is that the simplicity, that everything's stripped bare, and, you know, you're making a decision, it's always risk versus reward, and like, is this safe, will this get us there faster? Or, you know, you make very simple decisions and you live quite a simple time, which I really, really liked. It made, you know, got rid of all the noise is what I'm saying. But at the moment, you know, you're not in the Himalayas, I'm not at sea. So how do you keep that simplicity sort of going? How do you quieten your mind? I'd love to know.
And I think there's something so liberating about having everything you need on you. Definitely. You know, either on you or in your backpack. Everything you need to survive is on you. And I think for me, that is absolutely what I love about mountaineering, especially, is the simplicity of life. Much harder to achieve that when you get home. You know, I've definitely can't say I've got a completely clutter-free house, because I've tried. I do have a clutter-free bedroom. My bedroom literally just has a bed. That's it. I made that my mission to just declutter the entire room. Quietening my mind here, walking, being outside, fresh air. Try and make a point of doing that every day, getting outside. I think it's so easy to get wrapped up in being busy and working and looking at your screens, and just forgetting to, you know, just take a bit of time out, even if it's just an hour a day, and go and have a walk, get your heart rate up a little bit, not massively, just a brisk walk and some fresh air. And I think for me, that's such an important part of my day. Otherwise I think we all can, especially at the minute, it's easy to feel quite overwhelmed and get anxious about things. So I'd say it's as simple as
but it's a great I completely
outside
agree.
your front door,
having a breath of fresh air. I agree.
Yeah.
Let's talk about how many elephants, because again, this is a huge part of what you do, and it's a huge part of what I think is so interesting about your life and where adventure has led you. So you were studying for a master's, weren't you, in 2013 in sustainable design? How did you come up with the idea for how many elephants? Why elephants?
I like how much research you've done too. This is good.
It's your time, it's valuable.
So how many elephants? So as much as I love doing adventures, and I loved skydiving and horse riding and doing all sorts of adventures and working in those sports too, I felt I wasn't really using the creative side of my brain as much as I wanted to be. And as I said before, I was working as a graphic designer in London, and I trained as a designer. And I really wanted to go back to the roots of that. So sort of shelved the adventure for a while. It has come back, I'm pleased to say. Shelved that and went and studied for a master's in Brighton, in sustainable design. And I was actually studying a material called vegetable ivory, which is an amazing material. It's a nut.
I hadn't heard about it until I was doing my research about you, and then I was like, this sounds brilliant.
So many people haven't heard of it. It's a absolutely brilliant material. It's from a palm tree from the South American rainforests, and well, the particular one I was studying is from South America, and it's almost identical in color and texture to elephant ivory. So that sparked my interest in starting to research the African elephant crisis. And that was just a light bulb moment for me. I was so shocked and horrified by what I was reading, that 96 elephants are poached each day for their ivory. I wanted to come up with a fresh way of raising awareness of this problem. So I came up with a design-led exhibition which showcases 35,000 elephants on a wall, and that's the annual poaching rate. So I've purposely avoided in my exhibition using any gruesome or gory images, because I think, you know, we've become desensitized to that shock approach. And also, by not having any gruesome images, it's allowed me to take this exhibition into schools, do a lot of work with adults as well that wouldn't otherwise necessarily be able to engage with this subject matter. So to actually see and connect with this data visually is highly impactful. To see 35,000 elephants on a wall, your jaw just drops and you think, how is this possible? I also built a necklace that is made from vegetable ivory. It's 96 elephants cut in vegetable ivory to show the daily poaching rate. And I've weaved a narrative into the piece with one elephant's hand cut in brass, because the poachers' bullet shells commonly made from brass, and one elephant is facing the other way to say that this crisis can still be turned around and that they're not extinct yet. So I guess in a nutshell, excuse the pun, the campaign is using design as a powerful communication tool to bridge the gap between scientific data on one hand and human connection on the other. It's a traveling exhibition. It was traveling around the globe pre-COVID. I had a 6-week trip booked to China with lots of speaking engagements and exhibition appearances as well, in Shanghai, Beijing and Hong Kong. So I hope to be able to resume that trip, you know, when I can. So yeah, I mean, How Many Elephants is now totally my life. It's a UK registered charity, raised a lot of money for direct action initiatives on the ground in Africa. So that brings me into the adventure. How that's found its way back in is, to be honest, looking back, I love all the adventuring that I did, but these days, the furthest thing from my mind is world records or world firsts. It's just doesn't interest me at all. Now it's just all about adventure with purpose. So 2 of the initiatives that I support are all female anti-poaching teams. One is in Zimbabwe, Akashinga, and the Black Mambas in South Africa.
I couldn't believe it when I heard about them a while ago. I just was like, these are the most badass women I have ever come across in my life. I was like, the front line,
and they are
front line, all female-led anti-poaching team. They are incredible.
They are incredible, pioneering women. So yeah, it was a huge privilege to have. Well, I'd say I'd earned the huge privilege through advocating and championing and supporting their work for a long time, that I got to spend time on the front line with them and fully immerse myself. So with the Black Mambas, I was with them for several weeks. And I was trying to figure out what drives and motivates these women to do the work that they're doing. They're away from their families for long periods of time. But what became clear, Simone, is the pride with which they wore this uniform, and how becoming a ranger had totally empowered them, it had given them skills and knowledge that they didn't, newfound knowledge and hope. They were now the breadwinners in the family. And it also became clear that these women are not only working on the front line of conservation, they're also fantastic role models in their communities. They're educators. They work with the local schools, and they're massive beacons of hope. They're changing the attitudes towards the role of women in Africa and beyond. So I felt truly honoured to spend time with them. The fundamental difference between the two teams, Akashinga are fully armed. They have AK-47s, and the Black Mambas are unarmed. They have pepper spray and handcuffs. Two very different propositions, but both teams are making a tremendous impact on the ground, and the poaching numbers have come right down. Both teams also work very closely with the local communities, which I think is absolutely essential.
Definitely educating from within as well. And as you're saying,
yes.
They are educators, because children are seeing that this is the future of conservation and responsible. It's fantastic. How are they sort of managed? I won't ask you too much about the operation, but it's sort of, how is it decided who can join? How are they trained?
So for example, with Akashinga, they've just done a recent intake, and the local women, they are invited to come to a selection, a few days where they really are put through some pretty full-on, activities. And so anyone, I think, can come to that, but a very small percentage of those women actually make it through the selection processes, just because they've got to be so mentally strong and physically as well. But what was interesting is just going back to us talking about women as endurance athletes. I mean, to see and spend time with these women, they just are living proof of that. I mean, they're just such incredibly tough, strong-minded women. But many of them have come from, sort of maybe abusive relationships. Some of them that I spoke to definitely come from an abusive relationship at home. Some of them had, from very poor communities. So for them, they said, they sort of feel that they didn't have too much to lose in just going for these selections. Like, it could only lead to a better life for them. So that was the main message I was getting through back from these women, having spoken to them, that they were absolutely like, yes, this is definitely the direction and path that I want to follow. But such inspiring ladies, and
really
dangerous work.
Very dangerous. I volunteered only for a month at Amakhala, near Patterson, in South Africa, and that taught me a lot in a very short space of time. They're amazing. Honestly, it must have been you guys that led me on to find out about them, and it was great. And I was watching some of your stuff at the BBC. That must have been good, because I suppose through you're also a vehicle, not only through How Many Elephants, but you personally can bring the story here and different places. And it's
absolutely
great.
And I think that's what we're trying to do through How Many Elephants is really amplify these ladies' voices and get them out there more, so that people can get involved and support them as well. I just had a thought as well. We're talking about the adventure side of it. When I went out on a night patrol with Akashinga, that just blew adventure out of the water. That suddenly became this incredibly very real. I felt like I was in a sort of war zone as a war correspondent, and we set up a camp. We were dropped out in the middle of nowhere, set up this camp. They're all armed. One of the rangers stayed back at the camp, so that they said if the poachers had found the camp, they'd destroy it and steal everything there. And then we did this great big patrol around the camp, our little makeshift camp. And you're just in the middle of nowhere, and there's wild animals right there, and there's signs of poachers. And it just made me realize that these women were my total lifeline. I was, the only one that was unarmed, I'm a total fish out of water in the bush. It's not a natural environment for me at all. And it was just an incredibly, I can't even, it was just an amazing experience to see the freedom of the experience the African bush in this way and with these women. I was literally pinching myself thinking I'm out on patrol with Akashinga, or I'm not on a safari trip here.
Exactly,
you know, it was so real. So yeah, full respect for these ladies.
Hugely. And so I guess that leads me to ask a question that people always want to know about, is the money question. If you don't mind me asking, is like, how does like a typical day look like, you know, when we're not in COVID times?
No, I think it's really important you bring up the money, because I get asked that a lot, and I think a lot of people think, you know, they see the title adventurer and think, how on earth do you make money being an adventurer? The answer to that is I pay my bills through speaking, so keynote speaking, and that, you know, it's a fantastic way if you can make money by speaking and you enjoy speaking. It's a great job. I also spend a huge amount of my time working for the charity, and I don't take any money out of the charity. So all the money that I raise goes to these initiatives. And I think that's just, for me anyway, that's just where I'm totally passionate, you know, I'm totally passionate about conservation and using my charity, as I said before, to elevate the voices of these women. But it is tough. At the minute, the speaking gigs are much less than they were. I'm still doing quite a lot of virtual speaking. But fortunately, when you can get the you know, good gigs at conferences and to corporates, etc., it pays really well. So it has been it's obviously been a difficult year for everyone, financially as well as from a well-being perspective. So I'm really looking forward to getting back into being actually able to go to live events and do that.
I know, hopefully it won't be too long, because as you say, I suppose everyone's just thinking so immediately at the moment, aren't we? And we're not.
Definitely.
Fingers crossed, getting better. I was hoping for the best.
Me too.
Thank
really
you
hoping.
So much. It was, I could listen to you honestly and ask you questions for hours and hours, but I am mindful of your time. I want to ask you, so I haven't shown you my Proust questionnaire, have I? I was cruel.
No.
I haven't shown it to you because I'm relying on you to give amazing answers spontaneously. I can feel it in my bones that you'll be good at this. So background on the questions. I don't know, have you heard of Marcel Proust? I don't know. I probably should say Proust, pronounce his surname in a pretentious French way. He was a French essayist and novelist back in the 1800s, and he had a questionnaire of 35 questions, which he believed, if answered, would give you or reveal an individual's true nature. But don't worry, I'm not going to ask you 35 questions. So I've sort of whittled it down to my top 10. So I'm stealing his idea and reducing it down.
No worries. That sounds good.
So just crack on and ask you question number 1.
Yep.
What is your idea of perfect happiness?
Wow. Outdoor spaces and least humans the better in them.
Love it. Question number 2. What is your greatest fear?
There's a good one. I'm going to say rats.
Okay, good.
And then followed by the pitch darkness.
Yeah. On what occasion do you lie?
When the doctor asks you how many units of alcohol you drink in a week.
Universal, especially at the moment. Why not?
Yeah.
Very true. No one has said that before, and I completely agree. And what do you consider to be your greatest achievement?
My greatest achievement, I'm going to say, is my charity.
I'm not surprised. And what is your motto, if you have one at all?
Think big, dream bigger.
I like it. And what is your greatest regret?
I try not to have regrets, so I've probably yes, I'll leave that there.
Yeah, good. I like it. Almost there. Number 9. Which historical figure do you most identify with?
Oh gosh, that's a difficult one because I identify with quite a few. So yeah, that's probably a difficult one to actually. But yes, Sir Edmund Hillary's up there with the Everest guys, and I'm married to a New Zealander and done lots of outdoor stuff in New Zealand, so he's definitely up there, I'd say.
Nice.
Yeah,
it's always really interesting. It's a hard one because there are so many historical figures you can like and admire, but if you identifying with is a very different question, I think. So well answered. And last but not least, how would you like to die?
Oh, I think quickly and possibly just in my sleep.
Yeah, I agree. Definitely.
Yeah, peacefully.
Great, thanks. Don't worry, those questions are over. It's been fantastic to talk to you and hear about everything, and I know you've shown no signs of stopping it. I can't wait for you to be able to travel more, speak more, and inspire more people like me.
Thank you. Can I just add something to that?
Yes.
That if anyone's listening,
how can people get involved? How can they learn more?
Yes, so that's what I was going to say. In lockdown, it's just been totally heartwarming to see how many people have contacted me saying, I've got more time on my hands, I've got these skills, and want to volunteer for the charity. And what I've found is it's just brilliant when passionate people join together and the sparks really do start flying. So if you're sitting there thinking, I want to help, I want to get involved, how can I make a difference? Please do go to my website, howmanyelephants.org. And on there you will find lots of details about ways to get involved with the charity, and in turn helping these female rangers that we're working with.